I uncovered 5 unbelievable crimes hidden for over 20 years. You won't believe what they found. I never should have opened that door. The moment I did, a chill gripped me, something sinister slithering down my spine. My hands trembled as the timber creaked, revealing a room that had been untouched for 2 decades. Dust particles danced in the pale light, the air thick with a musty odor, like forgotten memories rotting in the dark. Every step I took felt wrong, like I was trespassing on something evil. Shadows clung to the corners, whispering secrets I wasn't prepared to hear. My heart raced as the uncomfortable sensation of being watched prickled at the back of my neck. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see a hand reaching from the darkness. But it was just me alone with the past. The walls were adorned with faded pictures. They showed smiling faces, families, friends before everything changed. I could almost hear their laughter, but it was drowned out by the oppressive silence. Then came the first strange noise. A soft shuffling, like the rustle of paper or maybe something moving. My blood ran cold. Was it my imagination, or something far worse? I approached an old wooden table, covered in grime. A single newspaper lay there, yellowed and frayed. The headline caught my breath. Mysterious disappearances plague the town. Dates from 20 years ago. I swallowed hard, dread pooling in my stomach. What happened to those people? I scanned the room, realizing everything was in disarray. Books scattered across the floor. A broken vase with shards glittering like teeth in the dim light. Something was wrong, and I could feel it tightening around me like a noose. Could there be still more? I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on me, lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the space, jolting my nerves. I jumped, my heart pounding in my chest. What was that? Adrenaline coursed through me as I turned to face the source of the sound. Was it just a house settling? Or was there something waiting? Something that didn't want me here? My breath raced, shallow and anxious. I was drawn to a door at the far back. It looked ancient, the wood warped and dark. I felt compelled to open it, but dread gnawed at me. What if it led to the truth? Or something worse? The thought made my muscles tense, but curiosity clawed at me. As I reached for the doorknob, the air grew heavier, suffocating. And then, from down the hallway, a low whisper drifted through the space. "Leave," it crooned. My heart seized, a primal instinct screaming at me to flee. But just then, the door swung open on its own, revealing complete darkness within. I stepped back, terror coursing through my veins. There it was again, the noise, a soft shuffling closer this time, a cold draft that swept past me like a warning. I was not alone in here. And then came the scream, a piercing, blood-curdling scream that felt like it shattered the silence. I stumbled back, my mind racing. What had I unleashed? Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The scream resonated in the hollow room, sending shards of ice coursing through my veins. I pressed my back against the wall. The cold was seeping into me as I struggled to gain my bearings. The heavy silence that followed the scream clung to the air, thickening it with dread. What had I just uncovered? I scanned the darkened hallway, heart hammering in my chest, praying that I'd feel the familiar tug of dawn's light seep through the grimy windows behind me. Instead, the shadows seemed to pulse, darker and deeper than before, and from within their grasp, a horrifying realization washed over me. The door to the darkened room was wide open, and a frigid air drifted from within, swirling around me in ghostly tendrils. "Leave!" The whisper returned, more urgent, more palpable, as if it had taken on a life of its own, echoing off the walls. I could hardly breathe, The phrase felt like a warm breath sliding past my ear, a warning. Perhaps? A plea? Against every rational instinct screaming at me to turn tail and run, I found my feet moving toward the void of that room. I had to know. The shadows clutched at me like hands, dense and wet, as I crossed the threshold into the darkness. My pulse drummed against the silence, each heartbeat a reminder of my fragile humanity in the face of whatever malevolence lay hidden within these walls. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for a light to pierce the oppressive dark. The screen flickered to life, illuminating a narrow expanse before me, revealing only cobwebs and closet remnants. But just beyond my reach, I could sense something else, a chill, unnatural and profound. Then, from the corner of my eye, I caught a faint movement. My breath quickened involuntarily. My light darted toward the sound, and there it was, a figure, almost indistinct, but standing resolutely at the edge of my vision, too close for comfort. I blinked, hoping to adjust my eyes against the erratic glow, but it didn't help. The figure remained just out of focus. Shadows warped its body, twisting and curling like smoke. I felt a sob rise in my throat. I took a hesitant step backward, retreating into the dim light of the hallway, but the floor creaked beneath my feet, betraying my movements. The figure pivoted towards me, and a face began to emerge from the shadows, a gaunt visage with hollow eyes that swallowed light and seemed to stare straight into my soul. It looked like a specter of despair, an echo of longing from a time long past. "Help us," it rasped, the voice disembodied and haunting, a low tremor that reverberated through my bones. "Who? What do you want?" I stammered, feeling the walls close in around me. The remains of the room began to whirl, collapsing into fragments of tortured memories, each one surging forward like desperate hands reaching for salvation. "Help!" It repeated, the word a chilling incantation that thrummed with urgency and sadness, and suddenly, I was aware of more. Around the figure, the room shimmered into focus. Scattered objects began to coalesce from the past. A child's toy, a shattered picture frame, a half-burned candle that flickered with a sorcerous glow, casting trembling shadows upon the walls. Then, with a sudden lurch of reality, the door behind me slammed shut, sealing me in darkness with the phantom visage. Panic flared as I pounded against the wood, my fists desperate against the impenetrable surface. Behind me, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of lost souls entwined in despair. "Help us, help us!" The air turned electric, crackling as I twisted back towards the figure. My breath caught in my throat. It had moved closer. In one swift motion, it reached out, skeletal fingers stretching towards me, trembling as though desperate for connection. "Free us," it intoned, and I felt a visceral urge ripple through me, a compulsion to listen, to obey, and then, the lights flickered violently in my hand, plunging me into darkness. My pulse raced. I stood frozen in a void filled with whispered pleas, and through the din a singular thought emerged. If I was to help, what price would pay? Then, just as the darkness threatened to consume me, a piercing shriek escaped my lips, and in that same heartbeat, the world around me shifted, folding, twisting, screaming. The walls warped, revealing glimpses of the past and horrors I had yet to comprehend. And in that moment, everything went silent, replaced only by an echoing heartbeat that wasn't mine. Throbbing through the suffocating silence, in the stillness, a dark, ominous presence lingered, and I felt a hand grip my shoulder from behind a firm, unyielding pressure. I turned, but there was nothing there. All that remained was a whisper in my ear, chilling enough to freeze the blood in my veins. "You belong with us now." And the room began to close in again, my surroundings warping into figures that crowded around me, their hollow eyes fixed upon my own, hungry for freedom and vengeance. As I realized, I was not the one to help them. I was their next victim. The shadows curled tighter around me, the suffocating air thick with a palpable sense of despair. As I struggled to comprehend the gravity of my situation, the faces surrounding me flickered with a haunting familiarity, a tapestry of anguish that felt woven into the very fabric of the past itself. I was not merely in the grasp of lost souls, but intertwined in the history of their torment. "Join us," they whispered, voices overlapping in a terrifying harmony that echoed off the warped walls. Their pleading eyes bore into mine, their shared sorrow a heavy weight on my chest. But a darker urge lurked beneath the Surfacian insatiable desire to entrap me in their eternal suffering. I recoiled instinctively, stumbling back into the oppressive gloom, only to be met by the unyielding barrier of the closed door. It felt as though the very house was waging war against me, twisting its core to keep my fate sealed within these walls. The figures closed in, their shadows deepening, limbs elongating with an eerie grace that turned my skin to ice. "Free us," one of them snarled, a figure dressed in what appeared to be a tattered dress from another era, her skeletal hands clawing at the air, as if grasping for something just out of reach. "Why me?" The words escaped my lips like a prayer, a plea for clarity in the midst of chaos. "What do you want? How can I help?" Their whispers crescendoed, forming a terrifying, chaotically woven symphony. "Your blood, your voice, your light," as if on cue, the Candlia beacon of hope amidst the encroaching shadows flickered violently before extinguishing completely. In an instant, I was plunged into darkness so profound it was suffocating. I could no longer discern the twisted shapes around me. The air felt heavier, saturated with dread and a scent that stung my nostrils, a metallic tang that clawed at the periphery of my senses. I shut my eyes tightly, forcing myself to concentrate on the faint sound of their whispers, hoping to catch a trace of understanding within the harrowing calls. "Remember, recover," these words bounced around my mind, clawing their way to the surface like specters longing to be unearthed. Suddenly, something shifted in the stillness, the air vibrating with anticipation. My skin prickled as a cold gust of wind swirled around me, an irresistible force guiding my hand toward the wall beside me, as if it knew the secrets hidden there. My fingers brushed something uneven, smooth yet threatening, a small indentation that radiated a curious warmth against my chilled skin. Before I could think to withdraw, the wall groaned under my touch, peeling back to reveal a hidden compartment. Shadows recoiled as a sliver of unseen light cascaded into the space, illuminating a small, ornate box. There was a palpable energy thrumming within it, a dark magnetism I could neither understand nor resist. My heartbeat quickened as I pried it open, the hinges creaking like the solemn groan of a funeral dirge. Inside lay a collection of small objects, each one distinctly macabre. A rusty key, a frayed photograph depicting a woman in that same tattered dress, a child's tooth, and a note yellowed and stained, the ink scrawled in shaky hand. I found them just as my brain registered the grim weight of the pieces before me. The silence shattered as the wall burst, sending splinters flying, revealing an expansive cavern beyond. A deep chasm teemed with darkness, whispering promises of answers that felt dangerously close to madness. The flicker of terror ignited within me, a stark reminder of my own mortality drowning in the gravity of the figures now hovering ever closer. "Bring us back," they chanted with maddening insistence, the air vibrating with the urgency of their words. Their forms twisted grotesquely, hungry and desperate, the gaunt visage of the woman from the photograph now morphing into an image I would never be able to shake, a look of betrayal, pain, longing. The cavern beckoned with a sinister allure, a promise encrypted within its depths that might unlock the truth concealed for so long. But as I stood there, teetering on the verge of calamity, I knew I had but a moment to decide it: or I leap into the abyss in search of clarity, or would I join the mournful chorus of victims unable to escape their fate? Before I could make sense of my choice, a piercing scream shattered the night, a sound so raw and agonizing that it became an echo, reverberating through my core and intertwining with the silenced cries of those around me. And then, darkness enveloped me completely, as I felt unseen hands pulling me toward the chasm, into the depths of their despair, and I knew the choice had been made without my consent. The last thing I heard was the rustling of the photograph as it slipped from my hands, an image of a family torn apart, their dark fate sealed, whispering the name of a child lost to the abyss. I was falling, swallowed by the abyss, and the darkness wrapped around me like a shroud. It felt as if the very fabric of time distorted, stretching and compressing reality into an endless void. My heart raced, each beat sounding like a drum signaling my own impending demise. The screams echoed louder, a chorus of anguish that played on repeat in my ears, each wail reminiscent of lost hope and tragic farewells. I was no longer just a spectator. My essence felt tethered to the helpless souls, their pain resonating within me. The chilling air brushed against my skin, cold fingers scraping against my frail humanity, dragging me deeper into despair. Suddenly, the descent halted abruptly, and I landed on something solid yet unsettling, like a cold stone floor slick with the residue of unknown desolation. The sensation ignited a primal fear within me. I had sunk into their world-a purgatorial prison woven from the remnants of their anguish. The darkness began to thin, revealing glimpses of grotesque horror illuminated by an otherworldly light that emanated from the walls. Ethereal figures, each one reflecting suffering, hovered like lost reflections upon shattered glass. I scanned my surroundings, realizing the cavern was not merely empty. It trembled with life, a twisted celebration of the lost. The center. An altar rose, bone fragments and rotting flowers woven into barbaric sculptures that told stories fraught with malice. Slowly, I approached. My dread swelled as I noticed the photographs pinned to the altar with rusty nails, individuals I'd seen before and others whose faces made my skin crawl. A parade of despair. Among them, I spotted another familiar face, the woman from the photograph I had found, eyes wide in a silent scream, fingers clutching the child's empty wheelchair. The details slowly coalesced in my mind, fragments bursting forth like a dozen knives, cutting through the haze. Visions of happy memories danced behind my eyelids, only to be shredded by the ferocity of her gaze. A warning entangled in her silenced pleas. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice whispered, gliding across the air with an unsettling calmness. It curled around me, laced with venom and steeped in bitterness. The voice surged from the shadows, and to my horror, I recognized it. A familiar laugh that twisted sharply into a mockery. I recoiled, heart plummeting as the shadows shifted, and took form, congealing into a figure I loathed and adored in equal measure. "Mother." My voice cracked, swallowed in disbelief. "You were always drawn to the darkness," she said, her smile sinister and sweet, saturated with a profound melancholy. "Your heart discerned the truth even before you started this wretched search." Her eyes glinted as if poised to unravel divine horrors, filled with sorrow and betrayal. "You belong to this malevolence just like I once did." "What are you saying?" My hands trembled as I took a step back. I could feel the echo of hidden memories tugging at meth nights I had spent in her shadow, the warnings unheeded. She had spoken of the monsters lurking beneath the surface, but I had never imagined it would be like this. "They want you to join them," she purred, her form shifting, becoming a collage of the sorrowful faces surrounding me. "The agony I endured. It calls to you, pulses through your veins like your very lifeblood. Embrace your inheritance." I end that moment. The shadows surged forward, tangible and ravenous, reaching for me with their skeletal hands, eager to pull me into their embrace. Panic surged like molten lava coursing through my veins, propelling me toward the altar, where the fragments of tortured history lay scattered. "Mother!" "Don't!" I screamed, clutching a photograph, feeling the warmth of a long-lost love seep into my fingers. I could no longer tell how much was real, or if I was simply a puppet dancing to their macabre orchestration. The darkness beckoned me closer with soft promises, offering comfort to a soul that had been drowning in unresolved grief. Then, from deep within the shadows, I heard a child's voice, small and tremulous, yet piercingly clear, cutting through the cacophony. "Help me, please." The apparition of a neglected child stepped forth, a shadow cast by a light unmatched amid the maze of malevolence. It took my breath away, a mirrored torment held in an innocent visage. Its tiny fingers beckoned, begging for rescue, yet it was tainted by the same despair that clung to the others. Caught between the child's plea and my mother's grasp, the fabric of my sanity stretched dangerously thin. The voices crescendoed, as if pulling me in two directions at once, each side igniting flares of my own extinguished childhood memories. "Choose. Free the lost or enslave yourself," they clamored, and in that moment of sheer hopelessness, I felt the photograph slip from my grip, spiraling down into the dark beyond the altar. "No," I gasped, lunging forward, the air thickening around me with desperation. But the shadows danced, wrapping tighter and tighter around my limbs, laughter cascading like a waterfall of chaos as I realized I had already stepped beyond the threshold. And the last glimpse I caught before the darkness surged completely my mother's eyes, glimmering with joy, transformed into those of the woman from the photograph, a chilling encore of realization. It was then that the cavern began to tremble, as if the heart of the house itself had awakened, reeling from the freedom I had unknowingly unleashed. The shadows writhed violently, and the walls began to hum, resonating with each anguished cry. The child's desperate wail echoed into the void as the ground tore apart beneath me, a chasm of despair ready to swallow anything daring enough to defy its malevolent call. I fell again, deeper into the abyss, the world above fading into oblivion. And in the depths of that haunting darkness, I swore I felt the chill of fingers close around my throat, pulling me into the very heart of the void, a place where the lost souls awaited, and where the secrets of my family's sinister legacy would finally come to light. The pull of the void intensified, dragging me inexorably downward. My heart beat a relentless rhythm, thudding in my ears, drowning out the anguished cries of the souls I had disturbed. I flailed in the dark, limbs thrashing, desperate to break free from the grip of whatever wicked force sought to ensnare me. The laughter echoed in my mind, intertwining with the voices of the lost, a symphony of sorrow and madness that grew ever louder. Suddenly, I felt the ground solidify beneath me once more, but this was unlike the cold stone I had encountered before. It was warm, pulsating as if Olivia grotesque flesh stretched over a frame of jagged bone. I could hardly breathe, the stench of decay curling around me, suffocating in its rancor. I was entombed in something that had come to life, a grotesque remnant of the tormented kept in a shell of despair. "Welcome, seeker," a voice whispered, slithering through the air with a disquieting intimacy. "You've arrived at the heart of our congregation." Against my better judgment, I dared to open my eyes, and the sight before me pulled a scream from deep within. I stood encircled by a mass of twisted forms, grotesque and ghastly, all made from shadows, their outlines flickering like dying embers. They surrounded me in a circle, their eyes glowing with an unholy light that made my skin crawl. Each face bore expressions of torment and ecstasy, as if the shared agony had merged into a perverse communion. "Join us," the chorus of voices urged, harmonizing in a dissonant lullaby. "Share in our suffering. Your bloodline runs deep with despair, destined to feed our legacy." I stumbled back, gasping for air, as I fought against the treacherous pull of their dark invitation. Memories flooded my mind, flickers of laughter from my childhood, stolen moments of love, the warmth of compassionate embraces, all shattered by the weight of who I was supposed to be. The faces of those I'd known danced in front of me, entwining with the specters that sought to drag me down into their depths. As the swirling mass of shadows pressed closer, a figure emerged from within their throng. My heart sank as I recognized her, another ghost from my past. My old childhood friend, a girl I hadn't seen in years, her eyes now dull and clouded with despair. "Help me, please," she implored, her voice scarcely a whisper, as though she were struggling against the very essence of what she had become. "Is it really you?" I croaked, tears welling up. "What happened to you?" "It's what you will become if you remain here," she gasped, the shadows tightening around her. "You must leave before it's too late. Find the light. The altar holds the key." Before I could react, the shadows lunged toward her, snatching her into their depths. Her terrified scream echoed, blending into the cacophony of mournful wails reverberating around me. I felt a stab of guilt, of helplessness, gnawing at my insides, and in an instinctual rush, I turned and bolted. My only thought was escape. The darkness swirled chaotically as I sprinted through the shifting landscape, dodging grasping hands and anguished reflections of those lost to the maelstrom. I ran until my lungs burned, until the light struck my eyes like a lance of hope. I halted unexpectedly at another altar, different from the one I had just escaped. The ominous structure pulsated with light that shouldn't exist in such a wretched realm. That it was adorned with more photographs, but these were recent faces I recognized, familiar figures entwined in the tapestry of my life. Friends, family, all those who had touched my existence. and yet their eyes portrayed a horror that chilled me to the bone. They each wore the same silent scream as the woman before, bound in chains of fate, echoes of their laughter now heavy with impending doom. Then, from the very center of the altar, something fluttered a piece of paper, a single sheet glimmering with the faintest hint of light. Hope surged within me. As I reached for it, I felt something seize my leg, a cold grip that sparked fear, dragging me backward. Gasping, I turned to see skeletal arms erupting from the ground, their bony fingers clutching tight, the faces of the long-lost rising from the depths behind them. Not yet, they whispered, voices blending into a sinister harmony. Your time has yet to come. You cannot leave this place, for he is waiting. The air thickened around me, the shadows congealing into a figure, a silhouette I dared not acknowledge. Something ancient stirred in the darkness, a presence far more potent than the souls around me. It was then that I heard his voice, deep and resonant, echoing across the cavern. You will learn the cost of your search. Not all can be saved. A sharp pain sliced through my side as I felt a shadowy hand grasp my heart, squeezing tightly, pulling at the very strings of my existence. In a heartbeat, the chamber tremored anew, and the photographs on the altar began to dissolve, flickering like faulty memories swept away by an unseen tide. I screamed, desperate to clutch onto the fading figures of those I loved. But as the ground shook beneath me, I realized I was running out of time. The light was waning, the darkness throbbing with insidious hunger. The shadows closed in as I reached for the paper again, the last flicker of hope against the encroaching night. But the insatiable void wrapped around me, and I felt myself slipping into a blackened sea of memory, despair, and unknown fates, knowing that whatever waited for me would reveal the true cost of my family's legacy. And with that, as the world fell away and the shadowy figure loomed larger, I heard him whisper one last to me, a promise, or perhaps a threat. Welcome, child of despair. Let us commence the awakening. The darkness enveloped me as I began to drown. Not in water but in a suffocating tide of shadows, despair clinging to me like a shroud. The skeletal hands grasped tighter, the echoing whispers crescendoing into a ghastly chorus, urging me to surrender. I clawed at the air, gasping for any semblance of light or hope, the silence of my own thoughts replaced by the mournful cries of the tormented. Just as I was about to succumb, the altar flickered back into focus. The paper shimmered, pulsating like a heartbeat, defying the chaos around me. With a surge of defiance, I freed myself from the skeletal grip and lunged for it. Nails scraped raw on the rough stone as I snatched it from the altar. It was lighter than it should have been, a fragile whisper of strength carried within the very fibers of the page. The moment I clutched it close, the shadows recoiled, screeching as if stung by a blinding light. I unfolded the paper frantically, my heart drumming loudly against my ribcage. A warning, a portent, a map etched in scrawled letters, leading to the heart of the darkness. I could feel its pulse quickening beneath my fingertips, racing in time with my own. The ink seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow, flashes of memory spilling into my mind, fragments of my family's past, secrets shrouded in disgrace. Find the truth, the whispers hissed, now diminished to a low growl. Unearth what has been buried for far too long. That I took a breath, steel running through my veins alongside the dread that persisted. Clutching the map tightly, I turned from the altar, my heart pounding as I ventured deeper into the oppressive gloom of this wretched place. Tendrils of shadow reached out, clutching at my limbs as if seeking to drag me back into their unfathomable depths. Each step was infused with trepidation, each echo amplifying the surge of dread within. Fragments of my childhood flitted across my mind, visions of laughter in the sunlight, the warmth of family dinners, shadows lurking just beyond the periphery. My legs trembled, but I pressed on, desperate to piece together the horrors tangled within my legacy. Around me, shapes flickered, the lost souls weaving in and out of existence, their eyes fixed on me with an unsettling intensity, as if pleading for rescue or revenge. The void responded, feeding on my fear, a hunger that pulsed through the air like electric static. And yet, there was something more, a searching presence that gripped the marrow in my bones, looming larger than the lost souls circling me. With each moment that passed, the shadows thickened, swirling and weaving a tapestry of fear and despair. The black mist grew denser, wrapping around me like a serpent, suffocating yet alluring. I could hear them again, the faint echoes of my family, woven into the very fabric of this nightmarish realm. Their voices, sweet but sorrowful, urged me to turn back, to abandon this path of ruin. "You think she can save you?" A voice taunted from the depths, smooth and chilling like ice sliding against skin. "You only tread further into despair, child of shadows. You know not of the ghosts that linger beneath." I gritted my teeth, my mind racing. I had to find the heart, the center of this twisted reality where truths lay trapped in torment and echoes. The map in my hand seemed to pulse with urgency as I looked up in desperate resolve. The shadows dared me to continue, but for every inch gained, the feeling of a looming presence grew stronger, the weight of malevolent eyes upon my back. Suddenly, a shriek pierced the air, spiraling into a bone-chilling crescendo. The gathered shadows pulled apart, revealing a ghastly figure emerging from them, a smile stretching across its ghoulish face, a reflection of the darkness I had carried within me. It wore a cloak woven from the very fabric of nightmares, the eyes of 1,000 tortured souls swirling within the depths, and the voice carried the weight of centuries. "I am the keeper of your bloodline's sins," it rasped, its laughter echoing within the void, suffocating all hope. "You sought answers only to find despair. The altar did not hold the truth. I do. Come, child, and bear witness to what horrors you are truly heir to, for my patience is wearing thin." A surge of icy dread coursed through me, panic igniting in the pit of my stomach as I realized my mistake. The light I had hoped for was a mere illusion, a tantalizing facade masking the truth beneath a truth more terrifying than I could withstand. The shadows thrummed with anticipation, the figure drawing closer, threatening to engulf me in its grasp. "You would join them, of course," it whispered, the words sliding into my thoughts like poison. "Embrace your fate." But as the words sunk into me, clarity surged through my mind. I could not succumb. I would not let my family's past define my future. I clenched my jaw and stood my ground, ready to face whatever horror the abyss would unleash. And then, as if in answer to my silent defiance, the air thickened, vibrating with raw energy. But it was not mine. It emerged from below, a growing rumble resonating like the growl of a wounded beast, shaking the very foundation of this realm. The figure shrieked in rage as the shadows recoiled, searching for escape from whatever fate awaited them. I stood dumbfounded, feeling the tremors deep in my soul as the altar behind me glowed with a fierce radiance, revealing another layer of truth, a door of light bursting open amidst the shadows. But just as I reached for it, an anguished scream sliced through the air, a scream that sounded achingly familiar and yet utterly shattering. Instinctively, I turned, and in that moment of distraction, the shadows coalesced, and with one final burst of darkness, the abyss swallowed the light whole, sealing my fate as the world around me twisted into oblivion. I heard the spirits of the lost rise into a frenzied cacophony, mourning their final chance to escape. I had sought the truth, yet what lay ahead was a trial of horrors far beyond my comprehension. "Welcome," the figure hissed from the embrace of shadows, "to the true reckoning of your legacy." And as the last glimmer of sanity flickered out, the darkness whispered one final promise. "You shall not leave this place until you have embraced your lineage, and the blood of your ancestors runs dry." The shadows thickened, pressing against my skin with a clammy, suffocating grip. I could feel the weight of their malice bearing down on me like an iron shield, each breath a rapid gasp of despair. The figure's laughter receded into the gloom, but the echo of my own frantic heartbeat filled the void, reminding me that I was still alive, still trapped, still searching for a way out. With trembling fingers, I clutched the map tighter, the ink throbbing as if it were alive. It seemed to pull me, a beacon toward an unseen fate. The outlines of the stone walls flickered in and out, a grotesque mirage of my surroundings. My mind raced, grappling for any semblance of logic in this corrupted realm. The twisted allure of the shadows called out to my deepest fears, a sickly lullaby promising release from the turmoil. Yet I understood all too well that the release they offered came at a horrific price. "Oh, you see it?" A voice, brittle as dried leaves, sliced through the air. My skin crawled, every instinct urging me to turn and flee, but I forced myself to face the source. From the thick cloak of darkness, a finger emerged, pointed like a skeletal branch at something beyond the edges of my vision. I turned slowly, dread rising like bile in my throat. The flickering shadows revealed snippets of twisted images, scene of blood, betrayal, and whispered secrets too vile to bear. There, etched into the fabric of time, was a horrific tapestry woven from the very fibers of my family's history that I was drawn closer against my will. I watched through the kaleidoscope of torment as figures materialized, a family gathering, laughter misplaced, boiling beneath the surface like a cauldron waiting to erupt. Then, the laughter faded into a chilling silence, replaced by cries that echoed through the air like fragmented glass, piercing and sharp. I gasped, clutching my head as if to shield myself from the onslaught of memories. But they rushed in relentless, each one a shard of glass lacerating my sanity. I saw them, my ancestors, their faces morphed with anguish, their eyes wide with fear and treachery. I strained to comprehend what had transpired among them, but the understanding that slithered into my mind was far worse than I had imagined. Betrayal begets betrayal, the figure whispered, its grotesque eyes boring into mine. You think you seek the truth? There are shadows in every heart, faces of those you love, steeped in blood, obscured by their own darkness. Can you bear the weight of their sins? No. The denial fell from my lips like a desperate prayer. But as I shouted my protest, a force coursed through me, unearthing the buried secrets and memories that had been shrouded in silence for decades. Vivid flashes exploded in my mind, arguments erupting over dinner, the shattered glass of an estranged relationship, a mother's eyes flashing with rage, a father's face etched with grief. I was so afraid. I whispered, my words a fragile thread. We all were. But the response was not from the shadows, but from within meth, understanding that my bloodline had been forged in fear, deceit, and unending cycles of darkness. Then embrace it, the figure crooned, closer now, its breath a fetid whisper of 1,000 regrets. Embrace your legacy, child. You cannot escape it. You are tethered to a marionette dancing on the strings of the past. Suddenly, the room erupted in chaos. The walls pulsed, and the air thickened as the entity raised its hand, unleashing a swarm of specters that rushed toward me with howls of rage and sorrow. I stumbled backward, the rancid smell of death assaulting my senses, the faces of the lost writhing in torment, darting in and out of my vision. I screamed, but the shadows enveloped me, each ghostly figure calling out for release from the torment, their voices a whirlwind of pain. We were wronged. We were left to suffer. In that cacophony, a singular voice emerged, one of authority that commanded attention amongst the throng. You must make it right, it roared, its specter rising above the rest, eyes burning with an icy fire. You hold our salvation in your palm. The truth of our ruin lies entwined with your fate. Only then shall we know peace. The mob surged around me, their collective breaths a storm of despair as they clawed at me, desperate, pleading. I could feel their cold, clammy hands on my skin tearing at the fragile seams of my resolve, beckoning me to join them in their eternal suffering, promising that revealing their stories would grant them release. And just as I felt myself being pulled into their abyss, the map ignited with a blinding brilliance, casting the shadows into a frenzy. The figure screeched, its form contorting as it desperately reached for the glowing paper slipping from my fingers. In the midst of that chaos, as the world spiraled around me, the map fell open, revealing a new path, a sequence of horrific landmarks carved into its surface, each one pulsating with a life of its own. I caught a glimpse of the glimpse of the answers I sought. But before I could grasp them, the shadows consumed the light, plunging me back into suffocating darkness, the weight of my lineage crashing down like a tidal wave. Remember, the voice called out in a fevered pitch, but the echoes faded, leaving only the hollow thrum of dread. And then, through the rasping silence, a singular truth emerged in the very core of my Bana name, the key to everything, lurking just at the edge of my consciousness. A revelation hidden for longer than I could fathom, as I clung to that name with desperate hope. The ground beneath me shifted, a new horror awakening with a deep rumble. "You will not escape," the figure hissed, its presence more foreboding than before. "Your bloodline craves its reckoning, and the night has only just begun." And with that, the earth cracked open, a dark chasm splitting through the chamber floor, and from it emerged a voice, raspy, torn, echoing the desperation of 1,000 souls. "Your legacy has risen," it warned, and as I braced myself against the overwhelming inertia, the shadows surged one last time, demanding my last choice before the abyss swallowed me whole. "Will you face them, or will you become one of us?" The chasm opened wide, and as I teetered on the edge, I understood. My choice would mean the end of one story and the beginning of another far more horrifying. The darkness engulfed me, a void so profound that it threatened to draw me into its depths. The sharp edge of fear cut through my veins as I balanced precariously on the brink of that yawning chasm, the echoes of the past swirling around me like tornadoes of memory and loss. The figure writhed in the shadows, its wicked grin twisting the remaining light into grotesque shapes, and within the ghastly shadows, I saw glimpses of what awaited me. Twisted horrors, screams trapped in time, eyes that held unbearable agony. "You can still turn back," it taunted, its voice a serpentine whisper, slithering through the air to curl around my heart. "But the truth will devour you whole if you refuse it. Embrace the darkness, and let it set you free." There was no escaping the weight of the revelation that hung in the air, a name, a forbidden whisper pulsing at the back of my mind, refusing to let go. It promised a way through, yet at the same time, it hinted at destitution and despair. My blood sang with an urgent need to understand, to unravel the threads of my family's sinister tapestry woven through years of silence. With a shudder, I looked down into the gaping maw below. The shadows writhed, pulsating like a living thing, filled with the venomous essence of what lay buried. Secrets that could destroy me or set me free. My heart raced, caught in the dichotomy of fear and undeniable resolve. I had to know what lay beneath. "Choose," the figure hissed, its voice molding the very air around me. The shadows strained against the chasm, eager to pull me into their depths, while the echoes of the damned whispered promises of vengeance and truth. I had a decision to make. Step away into the safety of ignorance or plunge into the abyss of revelation. "Enough!" I forced the word past my trembling lips, feeling a surge of defiance rise within. Yet, standing at the precipice tested my very essence, the urge to flee wrestling with the insatiable desire for knowledge. "What's the name?" I shouted toward the void, summoning the courage looming just beneath my terror. "What is the truth?" The shadows recoiled as if struck, the mass of sorrow and pain momentarily dissipating, revealing a sliver of light that danced enticingly on the air. The figure drew back, holding its ground with a scowl. "You seek the truth? The name you hear is but a whisper against the screams of the past. It will consume you." "Tell me," I shouted, my voice nearly drowned by the rush of anguished spirits clawing at the edges of my mind. Their cries harmonized in a haunting chorus. I focused, willing my trembling body to stand firm. And then, from the depths, came an anguished wail that split the very fabric of the night, a voice that shattered years of silence, ushering in an unholy tempest. "Madeline!" it cried, ethereal and shrill, swirling through the endless darkness. "Madeline, confront it!" At the mention of the name, a lightning bolt of recognition cut through me. The truth lunged forward like a predator grasping for its prey, dragging with it long-buried memories of whispered conversations and hushed fears around dimly lit tables. My great-grandmother was that her name? The curse that had haunted my family echoed through time, shadowing every generational divide. What did she do? I breathed, horrified at the unfolding tragedy that wrapped around my lineage. The spirits moaned, a collective wail of sorrow echoing through the chamber, thrashing against the confines of the veil that separated us from their tormented existence. The shadows grew restless, rebuffing their own anguish as a dawn of realization washed over me. I was connected to the very source of their suffering. Betrayal, an unspoken pact that bound us all. The past had reared its ugly head like a monster clawing its way back into the light from the depths. The voice of my ancestor cried out again. It flows through your veins, the horror, the pain. Madeline, you must choose. And suddenly, the chasm widened further, swirling with an abyss of unnameable horrors. Faces of my ancestors twisted in agony, their fingers clawing at the edges of the void, pleading for release. I spotted them. Lost loves, faded memories littered with betrayal, the full weight of my legacy threatening to crush me under its burden. But as I peered closer, in the unearthly luminescence of the void, I saw a visage, one that sent chills ripping through me. A shadowy outline surged forth, familiar yet monstrous, its features a grotesque reflection of my own. My heart thudded in my chest, fluttering like a caged bird in the oppressive atmosphere. I will not become you, I yelled, retreating, yet it advanced, its form pulsating, reflecting my terror and anger as if feeding off my fear. You are my history, not my fate, the figure screeched, a sound that tore through the air like the crack of thunder. You are entwined with us, child. Deny it, and we shall bury you here, alone with our sins. The shadows surged, a wave of energy crashing towards me as I grappled with my identity and the choices that loomed before me. In that moment of chaos, I reached deep within, instinctively grasping the name that had embedded itself in my consciousness. Madeline, I whispered, feeling the pulse of energy shift around me, and the ground trembled beneath my feet, the air thickening with anticipation, shadows writhing and screeching as if the name held the power to undo their anguish. Madeline, confront what she did, discover your legacy before it's too late. The phantoms cried, their eyes pleading yet filled with desperate rage. But as I braced for the truth, the ground split with an ear-splitting crack, and from the darkness, a spectral hand shot forth, wrapping tightly around my wrist, cold and unyielding. You cannot escape, it whispered, drawing me closer to the abyss. I gasped, grasping at remnants of light, the weight of it pulling me further toward the brink. My fate was intertwined with theirs, but as the last threads of clarity slipped through my fingers, I realized one heart-stopping revelation. Some truths are better left buried, and then darkness consumed me entirely. I struggled against the icy grip that held my wrist in the unforgiving embrace of the void. The shadows howled around me, a chorus of rage and despair, each whisper punctuated with memories I had yet to uncover, secrets pressing against my mind as if they were trying to break free. I could feel them clawing, twisting, finding their way into the corners of my consciousness, threatening to drown me in their depths. Let me go! I fought to shout, but my voice faltered, caught in the cacophony of torment that surrounded me. The more I resisted, the more the spectral hand tightened, drawing me closer to a darkness that promised no ray of salvation. My heart pounded as the essence of my ancestry wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud, and the despairing cries rang in a tormenting symphony, each note a reminder of the sins they endured. How many? I gasped breathlessly as I felt the ground shift, volatile and unsteady beneath my feet, as if it too was desperate to wrench itself from the grasp of our family's curse. How many lives did you steal from us? Not lives, the specter hissed, its voice oozing malice. Legacies. It's not about the souls taken. It's about the darkness left lingering in the bloodline. Your choices will echo through eternity. In twisted revelation, I began to understand. It wasn't just the act itself that haunted them, but the choices that followed. Betrayals, secrets, alliances formed and broken, each thread weaving a sinister tapestry. And there, woven carefully into the center, was the name I had unearthed. Madeline. This is not my fate. I screamed, desperation edging my voice. Their choices do not define me. The shadows surrounding me surged violently, as if my defiance ignited a rage centuries in the making. My vision moored in the endless dark became dotted with flashes of grotesque figures, me ancestors, twisted in horror, skeletal hands outstretched, pushing me closer and closer to that malignant chasm. But then the ground beneath me cracked wider, revealing a glimpse of a world beyond comprehension. A resonance that vibrated deep within me, reverberating against my ribcage, calling out for acknowledgement. Faces flashed by, each bursting with torment, shame lighting their sunken features, a lineage bound by decisions that morphed into a cycle of anguish, manifesting in endless patterns of despair. Your blood calls for the truth. The figure that had gripped my wrist crooned, voice sweetened by malice. It yearns for release. Release? I echoed, breath hitching with recognition. I could already feel my identity fraying, losing pieces to centuries of anguish. What do I have to do? The specter's grip loosened, a tantalizing invitation to step beyond the precipice. My heart thundered in my chest as I wrestled with the knowledge that clawed at my Minda name hidden within memories, waiting to spill. Find Madeline. Confront her sins. It breathed, the icy chill of its intentions leaving a trail of shivers cascading down my spine. Only then shall you understand the essence of your lineage and the depths of your own heart. The shadows writhed, an undulating mass of fury, despair, and longing, their anger linked to my hesitations. I was their tether, yet I held the potential to unravel the monument of guilt buried beneath our family name. Below, the depths whispered promises of Clarissa possibility that bore the weight of catastrophe. With a single determined breath, I stepped toward the void, as paradoxical as it seemed. The very ground shook, and a surge of light cascaded up the chasm's edge, illuminating the spectral forms reaching out for me. Their wails multiplied, merging into one dissonant shriek that reverberated through the darkness. And as I plunged deeper into the abyss, I felt the presence of something ancient, an entity inhabiting the cruel spaces of the dark, its breath on my neck like an unyielding caress. I could see it then, the flickering outlines of an ancient home, decayed and twisted with time. A sanctuary of horrors past and crimes long forgotten. Madeline, I whispered, the name slipping from my lips like a tether to my sanity. Just then, a flash of movement caught my eye figures, unrestrained and manic, darting within the shadows, their eyes glinting with a malevolence that knew no bounds. They whispered incoherent secrets to one another in a flurry of noise, spinning tales that seemed to echo from the very depths of my bloodline. The realization struck me with the force of 100 lifetimes. I was not merely confronting my ancestors' sins. I was entangled within their horror-sand unbroken chain, poised to reveal the ultimate truth that lay buried beneath decades of ignorance. As I stood there, the weight of my own identity and the burden of those before me crashing down. A scream erupted from the shadows. A figure emerged, contorted and feral, dashing toward me, its visage a grotesque reflection of my own terror. Madeline will not let you leave, it howled, a voice entwined with rage and despair. And before I could process my horror, the darkness erupted around me, and I seemed to float, weightless, suspended between histories yet to unfold. The last remnants of light disappeared, swallowed by terror as the truth loomed, ready to consume me whole, and then, everything stopped, time, breath, and sense left hanging. As I realized the twisted shadows around me formed a single face, dark and malevolent, whispering in my ear, "Your choice is imminent, and I will show you everything you wish to forget." At that moment, the ground beneath me cracked thunderously, and everything crumbled into nothingness. But I did not just fall into darkness. Something writhed beneath the surface, claws poised to reach out and seize me, its hunger insatiable. And suddenly I was not alone. The suffocating darkness wrapped around me like a relentless shroud. But as I fell, I felt a Presencian energy that pulsated with a cruel sentience. It surged through the void, immobilizing me in its grip, weightless yet heavy as centuries of anguish whispered secrets into my ear. For the first time, I realized I was descending not into an abyss, but into a communion with my ancestors, countless generations of agony straining against the fragile fabric of time. Words, once muffled by the storm of shadows, began to coalesce into anguished declarations that compelled me to remember. Madeline, the name echoed, igniting a long-buried instinct to seek the woman who had forged this cursome great-grandmother, the progenitor of a lineage steeped in sorrow and haunted choices. As the darkness twisted, I caught glimpses of images projected against the void, a mirror fractured, reflecting the horrors tied to each of my ancestors. Faces twisted in pain, their hollow eyes trembled as they reached out, begging for release. Each scream appeared as a wraith, swirling like dust in a dying wind, incapable of finding peace. I understood now. I had been born into a family bound not just by blood but by the secrets of a legacy wrapped in betrayal. Betrayals that had resulted in a cascade of tragedies had once called out to me like a siren, luring me closer to calamity all my life. And then, piercing the veil of despair, came a vision of her, the true embodiment of my family's darkness, Madeline herself. There she stood, ethereal yet grotesque, her features reflecting sorrow, regret, and a deep-seated fury. It was as if she had become the personification of the horror we had all tried to bury. "Welcome back, my child," she whispered, her voice dripping with a haunting affection that turned to jagged ice in my veins. "You have sought the truth, yet you know not the price you paid, and I know what you did." I screamed, my own resonance reverberating through the void. "You brought this agony upon us. You started this cycle." Madeline's laughter twisted into a sound that wrapped around me like barbed wire, shattering the fragile calm. "You think to confront me? Those who tread into darkness must also yield to it. I protected my secret, child, just as you will need to if you wish to survive. And no more secrets," I cried, reaching out toward her in desperation, as if I could bridge the gap of our generations, the living with the damned. "The truth is ours to own. What you have buried will not snare me." With those words, the reality around us seemed to tremor, a living entity manifesting her rage. I felt her become one with the darkness, the air thickening, pressing against my skin as she howled. "Do you even know what you ask? The darkness is not just mine. It weaves through your veins. You cannot escape your heritage, Madeline, nor the blood that calls for revenge." In that moment, realization struck. A relentless wave of truth crashing over me with an ominous fury. The darkness was tethered to me, a living entity waiting to be unleashed. I had only begun unearthing the lies. I knew I had to confront the legacy of Madeline. I had to confront my family's sins, not just for those who had suffered, but for myself. "Show me," I ordered, summoning my will against the inertia of the shadows surrounding me. As if my resolve had awakened something dormant, the darkness shimmered, revealing fleeting visions of the past, the moments that enveloped our family in a toxic haze. Broken promises, wails of grief, and the unmistakable signature of generational trauma. I could see them, the faces I once loved but had not truly known. I could see my great-grandmother's betrayal scarring the hearts of those who came after. And at the center of it all, seething with red-hot agony, was the core of the curse, a single act of violence that had forged the bond. Madeline had sacrificed something dearly beloved to tether our family to darkness, a choice that had rippled through eternity, spreading despair like a plague. "What did you do?" I gasped, realization chilling me to the bone as the walls of the chasm began to warp, echoing with lost cries. "Everything comes at a cost," Madeline's voice echoed, more bitter than before. "A price paid in blood and shadows. Often the innocent had to bear the weight of our sins." In that moment of horrific clarity, understanding washed over me. The silhouette of all my loved ones had been caught in her web. Each of them had absorbed the echoes of sorrow, becoming carriers of a legacy of despair because of one decision, one moment in time where fury had consumed remorse. The shadows surged, growing dense as if hungrily grasping for my soul. Sensing I stood on the precipice of conclusion, a truth that could sever the chains binding us to this cursed cycle. "No more," I shouted, casting aside the fear that had anchored me for so long. "You have all suffered for too long. I choose to break this cycle, to release you." At my declaration, something shifted. The darkness exploded around me, a vortex of memories and sounds engulfing my consciousness. A whirlwind of lives intertwining, the hollow cries fading into a haunting silence. As I faced the tempest of shadows, I raised my hand, urging them to accept my will, and recited the name of my great-grandmother's name that had carried so much weight. "Madeline, you must release them." Light began to pour through the rifts, blinding and radiant, momentarily illuminating the agony trapped within. I could see them, their faces transforming from anguish to something gentle, their expressions softening as they began to drift away from the shadows, to find solace beyond. But before I could complete the manifestation, Madeline surged forward, fury igniting her form, becoming the embodiment of the storm. You would betray me? After all I have sacrificed? I will not allow it. She seized my wrist in a grip like iron, dragging me back into the tempest, my surroundings swirling into chaos as the bonds of the past threatened to reclaim me. The darkness roared. Whispers turned into screams, drowning out resolve, and just as I felt despair clawing at my heart, I realized the truth I sought had always been within me. Madeline, I screamed, and despite the darkness clawing at my consciousness, the terror that she would unjustly keep me tethered to the past, I reached deep within, calling forth the light, as I demanded, "You will have no hold over me." Cloaked in courage, I embraced the boiling rage that had simmered beneath the surface and struck out against the shadows, unleashing the light that burned in my heart, a force stronger than the darkness ever anticipated. And with that push, the very foundations of our family history trembled, the chains of anguish shattered, reverberating against the walls of the chasm. The silhouettes of my ancestors surged forward, freeing themselves from the suffocating grasp, a harmonious reunion echoing against the dread that lingered. As they surged toward the beckoning light, I closed my eyes, flooded with warmth as my heart swelled, embracing the revelation that we were not just bound by despair. We were anchored in love, daring to defy the dark. As the brightness exploded throughout, I felt the cords of our ruin untangle from my essence. I had become both the severing and the unifying force, the bearer of truth, but now the progenitor of change. But just as peace brushed across the edges of my heart, I heard a chilling whisper sweeping through the void, a sinister promise escaping the depths. Not yet, child, it lives within you. And suddenly, in the eye of light amidst the shadows, I felt the malevolence linger. Not everything was resolved. While my ancestors found freedom, the claws of darkness recoiled, leaving a singular truth that weighed heavier than any curse. The legacy of Madeline would never truly die. It merely lay dormant, waiting to awaken, for I was its new keeper. And as the luminance enveloped me, the final echoes resounded in my Minda mantra that would haunt me amidst the light, for I understood now. It is the darkness that teaches us who we are destined to become, and never lets go, even when we think we've broken free.